Good morning students. Today we are continuing this chapter sexual reproduction in flowering plants. In that chapter, last class we studied the different types of pollination, then the pollinators, that is pollinating agents, different types of pollinating agents. In that vine pollination we will discuss that is also called as anemophila. Today we are discussing the another bit that is called as the pollination by water. It is also called as hydrophilic. Okay, so pollination by vine, it is also studied by the last class. In that the vine is utilized by plants, through that the transport of the pollen grains towards the stigma will take place. But here pollination will take place by water. Through water current the pollen grains will be passed or transported towards the stigma. So here the pollination by water, it is takes place in the aquatic plants, it is rare. So this pollination is rarely observed. About 30 genera will have this type of the pollination. Say for example the monocotyledons, only the mostly monocotyledons will observe the pollination by water. So some examples we can take. The pollination occurs by water in VALLISNERIA. VALLISNERIA or Hydrilla. These are the freshwater plants. Or Zostera, or it is a marine sea grasses. So we can observe this pollination by water or hydrophila in some of the examples such as VALLISNERIA or Hydrilla in freshwater plants, Zostera, and it is also called as the marine sea grass. So now one by one discuss. Before that we have to know that the water is not only utilized for the pollination by water, water is also utilized opposite to this. In some of the plants the water is utilized for transport of male gametes in lower plants such as the bryophytes and pteridophytes. In lower plants, in bryophytes and pteridophytes, water is utilized for the transport of male gamete. So in that one, in that type of the plants, their distribution is limited because of the water is needed to them for transporting of male gametes and the fertilization. So transporting of male gametes and the carried out the fertilization process, they require a water. That's why in the geographical area bryophytes and the pteridophytes are limitedly distributed. So that type of the one thing will be observed in the some lower plants. But when compared to the aquatic plants, their water is utilized for the pollination purposes. Now the pollination by water will be observed in the VALLISNERIA, that is freshwater plant, aquatic plant, where we observe the female flower will be emerged at the surface of water. The female flower, this is the female flower. Okay, so female flower will emerge at the surface of water and the male flower will be at the inside the water only. So they are smaller ones, that's why they are producing the male inflorescence, means bunch of flowers will be observed in the male flower. Where as soon as the anther descends, the male gamete, that is male pollen grains, will be come out of the water, and at at the surface of water, they move through the water current towards the stigma. When it reaches the stigma, pollination takes place. So through the water current, it reaches this pollen grains reaches to the stigma of the female flower. So here it is a male influences where the anther will be descends and the pollen grains will release out, and they are passed through the water current. They move towards and reach to the stigma of the female flower, and they carry out the pollination. This will be observed in the pollination in the Vallisneria. So where both the flowers are present in the same plant, where the female flower is emerged at the surface of water with the stalk. With the help of the stalk, the female flower will be emerged at the surface of water, and male flower will be present inside the water. As soon as the anther descends, there is a releasing of pollen grains, and through the water current at the surface of water, the pollen grains will be moves towards the stigma and reaches the stigma where the pollination takes place. This is about the Vallisneria. Now come to the another example about the pollination in seagrasses or Zostera. In Zostera, pollination takes place where the female flower is present inside the water only. So female flower is present inside the water, and the pollen grains are ribbon shaped. The pollen grains ribbon shaped. As soon as the anther will descends, these pollen grains will move through the water towards the stigma, and the pollination takes place. So here in the Vallisneria, there is a coiling of the female flower, and when they meet to the pollen grains, the stigma will meet to these pollen grains, and they come down. After they come down inside the water, and they carry out the further process, that is first fertilization and post fertilization processes. In the sea grasses, where we observe the female flower will be present inside the water only. This is the female flower. And this is the female plant. This is female plant, where unisexual plants are there. So female plant is there. Here it is a male plant, where this male flower, this is the male flower. As soon as the anther descends, the pollen grains will release and they reach to the stigma of the female plant. So this is about the pollination in sea grasses, but pollen grains of most of the water pollinated flowers, where the pollen grains are covered by a mucilaginous, that is oily covering. So in the most of the aquatic plants where the water pollination takes place, so water pollinated flowers, where we observe that the pollen grains is covered by a mucilaginous covering that will protect them from the wetting of the pollen grains. So for wetting of the pollen grains, it will be protected them. So protecting the wetting of the pollen grains, there is a covering is there, that is mucilaginous covering is there, that will protect them from the wetting of the pollen grains. So this is about the pollination by water will observe in the Vallisneria as well as the sea grasses. So you have to listen here. The pollination will take place by water, or the hydrophily will observe in the fresh water as well as marine plants. In that, the different way of the pollination takes place. So the method is same, the hydrophilic method is same, but the procedure is different. Where in the Vallisneria, the female flower emerged at the surface of water, and male flower will present within the water. As soon as the male flower will releasing the pollen grains, they come out of the water at the surface of water through the water current. They move towards the female flower where they meet. They reach to the stigma and pollination takes place. After that, the coiling part of the female flower will come down to the water and they carry out the further process, that is fertilization and post-fertilization process. Whereas in pollination seagrasses, where the female flower is present inside the water only, where the male flower will release the pollen grains which are ribbon in shape, that male flower will reach to the stigma and pollination takes place. So here we observe the two types of plants, that is male plant as well as the female plant. Here the different types of flowers will be observed. This is about the pollination takes place in seagrasses. So most of these, the pollination takes place by water, that is water pollinated flowers, where we observe the pollen grains covered by a mucilaginous, that is oily covering, to protect them from the wetting. So this is about the pollination by water. So not all the aquatic plants will show the hydrophylla. So all the aquatic plants will not show the hydrophylla. They don't show the pollination by water. They are formed, they are emerged at the surface of water only. The flowers are emerged at the above the water surface. Above the water surface, they can carry out the pollination by insects. That is called the entomophila. That is pollination by insects. So all the aquatic plants will not show the hydrophylla. All the aquatic plants not showing the hydrophylla. In that plants there is the flowers will emerge above the surface of water through with the help of insect pollination takes place, that is entomophila, or they also carried out the pollination by vine or the anemophila. So in the other plants, most of the plants will not show the water pollination, they can show the entomophila or anemophila. Then vine and water pollinated flowers are not producing the vine and the water pollinated flowers are not producing the colorful flowers. They are not colorful and they cannot produce a nectar. So the vine pollinateds or the water pollinated flowers will not showing the colorful flowers. They are not colorful. There is no attraction of the insects or the birds towards them. So that's why they are not producing the colorful flowers, as well as they are not producing the nectar also. So this is about the pollination by water as well as the pollination by the vine, that is abiotic agents or abiotic pollinators. Next we studied the pollination by the biotic agents, that is biotic agents which are utilized for the pollination. So pollination takes place by animals. So there are different types of animals will be there. These animals will carry out the pollination in the plants. So mostly the pollination takes place the terrestrial plants. This type of the pollination mostly takes place in the terrestrial plants, not the aquatic plants. So the aquatic plants also showing the pollination by insects, but majorly the pollination by insect takes place in the terrestrial plants. Second thing, that is biotic agents. Or pollination by animals. So pollination of by animals, the majority of the flowering plants will show the animals as a pollinating agents. So majority of the plants, that's flowering plants, will show the pollination through the utilizing of the animals only. So here the examples you can take, some of the examples you can take, the bees, honeybees, the what you call butterflies, normal flies, wasp, beetles, etc. So in that, what about the flower, what about the pollination is placement? The pollination by animals, but the specifically the pollination which takes place by insects. These are all the insects, no? So these insects which are involved in the pollination, that type of the pollination is called as entomophily. It is also can written as in like this, entomophily. Okay, so the pollination takes place through the insects, that is bees, butterflies, flies, wasps, beetles, etc. All type of the insects will carry out the pollination. That type of the pollination is called as the pollination by insects or the entomophily like that you can write down. Okay, second example is the pollination through the birds, such as the sunbird or hummingbird. In this type of the birds, through these birds there is a pollination which takes place. By the help of birds, some plants will carry out the pollination. That type of the pollination is called as the ornithophily. So pollination by birds, in that plants, that type of the pollination is called as the ornithophily. The pollination by birds is called as ornithophily. As you know that the birds study of birds is called as ornithology. So here we can say the ornithophily. Next, another example, that is pollination with the help of bats or mammals. So the pollination by bats or the pollination by primates. So through this the pollination takes place. That type of the pollination is called as Hydrophilic. It is called as the Hydrophilic. So here the pollination takes place through the bees, butterflies, flies, wasps, beetles. These are all the insects will carry out the pollination. That type of the pollination is called as the entomophily or the pollination through insects. Then the birds will involve in the pollination. So pollination by birds is called as the ornithophily. Then pollination by bats and mammals will called as the chiroptophilia. Like that, pollination by reptiles such as lizard, the garden lizard also will carry out the pollination. That type of the pollination is called as the zoophily. Okay, so the different animals are involved. So in the biotic agents, the most of the plants will show the animals as a pollinating agents. In that, different types of pollinating agents are there. That is the insects, birds, mammals, as well as the reptiles. So based on the type of pollination, they are carried out with the help of animals. They are different types, that is entomophily, ornithophily, chiroptophilia and zoophily. In animals, in the oftenly the flowers which are carried out the pollination by animals, in that they have the specific criteria for specific animals. Means different species will have the different criteria for that species of animals. That's why the different types of pollination takes place. That is entomophily, ornithophily, chiroptophilia, zoophily. So this is about the specifically adapted, the plants which are specifically adapted to the specific type of the animals which is utilized for them for pollination. So the species which are involved in the pollination through the insects, at that time they have the specific adaptation for them. So what type of the adaptation will be carried out? We can discuss here the features of most pollinated flowers. Features of the mostly the vine pollinated flowers, we will discuss the features which are utilized for the plants to carry out the pollination through the insects. So the features of insect pollinated flowers. What are the features will be there to carry out this type of the pollination effectively? So we will discuss that here. So features of, like last class we studied the ways of effective pollination in vine pollinated flowers. Like that, here the features of the flowers which carry out the pollination through insects. That is insect pollinated flowers. Features of insect pollinated flowers. Okay, so insect pollinated flowers, where the flowers are large one, colorful one, then they have the fragrance, that is fragmented flowers, as well as they have the rich in nectar. So the flowers in this one, the flowers are larger one, they are large, then they are colorful one, they also fragmented, means they have the fragrance in them, fragmented, and they also producing the nectar. That is, they are rich in nectar. So to attract the insects in that type of the flowers, that is insect pollinated flowers, where the flowers are larger ones, they are colorful ones, as well as they are fragmented, means they can attract the insects, as well as the insects will require the nectar. So that is also present in the flowers. Then the nectar which are there, the nectar as well as the pollen grains. So nectar and pollen grains are the rewards for pollination. So these are the rewards to the insects for pollination. During the pollination, they get the pollen grains as well as the nectar. That is the reward for the pollination from the insect pollinated flowers. This is the one feature. Second feature is the when the flowers are small, what they are doing? The flowers, when they are small, they cannot visible to the insects. They can't visible to the insects. At that time, the flowers in that plants are producing the bunch in the bunch, that is, they are producing the inflorescence. So when the flowers are small, when the flowers are small in size, can't visible by the insects. So at that time, produce onto the inflorescence can easily visible to the insects. Yes. So when the flowers are small, when the plants will producing the small sized flowers, at that time they can produce these flowers onto the inflorescence, so that the inflorescence can be easily visible by the insects. That's why this is another feature will be observed in the insect pollinated flowers. Then the flowers pollinated by flies and the beetles will producing a type of the odor, a type of the foul odor, so that they can attract to the insects. So the insect pollinated flowers, where the flowers are pollinated by flies or beetles, because you know that the beetles and flies are growing or they are multiplied on the cow dung, or the foul smell will be attracting them. So that's why the flowers pollinated by flies and the beetles, in that flower a foul odor will be odor producer that attract the insect. So the attract the flies and beetles. You know that the beetles and insects, flies are growing onto the cow dung where the foul smell is there. So the flowers which are pollinated by these flies and beetles, they can producing such type of odor in the flower, that is foul odor will be producing. This foul odor means the bad smell. So bad smell will producing that bad smell will attract this type of the insects and they carry out the pollination. Then the majority of the flowers which are produced in the insect pollinated flowers, where the pollination takes place, comes in contact with the anther and the stigma, they are stick. Then the pollen grains are generally sticky. So pollen grains are generally sticky. As you studied in the last class, in the features of the vine pollinated flowers, where we observe the pollen grains are non-sticky. Pollen grains are non-sticky and they are light-weighted. But here it is opposite to this one. Pollen grains are generally sticky. As soon as they are distance from the anther, they reach to the stigma, they sticken that one. They sticken to the insects, sticken to the parts of the insects. So when some plants will show this type of the insect pollination will provide the safe places, is producing the safe places to catch that pollen grain by the help of the sticky pollen grains, which are stick to the insects and they can pass towards the stigma of the flower. So these are the 4 features which will be observed in the insect pollinated flowers. One is the flowers are larger ones, they are colorful ones, they are also fragmented ones, and they are rich in nectar. And this nectar and the pollen grains, these are the rewards to the insects for pollination. Then when the flowers are small, at the time what they do, the flowers are small in size, at that time they cannot be visible to the insects, that's why they can producing the flowers in the form of inflorescences, can be visible by the naked eye by the insects. Then the flowers pollinated by flies and beetles. In the flowers the pollinators are flies and beetles. At that time they can producing a foul odor in the flower, and that will attract this type of the insects. Then in insect pollinated flowers, where the pollen grains is generally sticky, because the pollen grains, when the insects will be present onto they are found onto the male flower, where they catch the pollen grains with the help of the sticky nature, that will be catch that pollen grains and they reach to the stigma of the another flower and they carry out the pollination. So this is about the features of the insect pollinated flowers. Next, some plants will show the unusual type of the flower pollination. So they can help to they can give the safe places to safe places for the animals to get the shelter from the flowers. So some of the plants will give the safe places to the animals for pollination. They give the safe places for laying the eggs. Say for example one of the best example about that one, Amorphophilus. So you know that the Amorphophilus is the type of the flower which is the largest flower in the world. You will discuss that one. So in some of the flowers will give the safe places to the animals for laying the eggs. For example, flowers will give the safe place for pollination and shelter. Say for example, Hydrophilic. It is the tallest flower in the world. It is about 6 feet tall. It is the tallest flower, which is about 6 feet tall, where they give the shelter to these type of the animals, where they carry out their breeding place, which they are utilize them as a breeding place. Another example is there, that is the moth and the yucca plant. Yucca plant, that is yucca flower, you can say the direct flower. So moth will lay the eggs inside this plant, lays the eggs inside this flower. So moth will lay the eggs inside the yucca flower. Yucca flower will back to give their nectar as well as the pollens to them, and as well as the shelter to them. So moth will lay the eggs inside the yucca flower, will carry out the simultaneously they carry out the pollination. Yes, so moth will lay the eggs inside the yucca flower, where during the laying of the eggs they carried out the pollination. After the pollination takes place, the laid eggs will be hatched out, and then during the hatching there is the seed germination takes place. The seed germination as well as the hatching of the laid eggs will be simultaneously takes place. So in this type of the animals, the moth will lay the eggs, they get the shelter from the yucca flower, they get the nectar from the yucca flower, and after the pollination, during the laying of eggs, there is a pollination takes place. So after that pollination, the seed germination takes place. So seed germination as well as the hatching of the eggs, the pupa, the what we call the larvae will be raised out. The larvae will come out after the hatching of the eggs. They are coming during the seed germination only. So seed formation as well as the hatching out of the eggs, the larvae will be formed. They are simultaneously takes place in this type of the yucca flower. This is the one thing. Then many insects will consume the pollen grains, will consume the nectar, but they are not carried out the pollination. So you know that the normally we can state the insects will will get the nectar, will get the pollen grains and carry out the pollination. But some of the pollen grains, some of the insects will not be carried out the pollination. They get the pollen grains, they get the nectar from the flowers, but they are not carried out the pollination. Such type of the insects are called as pollinator robbers. They are called as pollen robbers or the nectar robbers. Pollen or nectar robbers. They are not carried out the pollination, but they get the pollen grains. They get the pollen grains, they get the nectar from the flower, but they are not carried out the pollination. Such type of the insects are called as pollen or nectar robbers. So this is type of the This is the a type of the unusual pollination. So one is they simultaneously, mutually, that is we can say the mutually understanding to each other. Mutually they are carried out the pollination. The Amorphophilus, one of the tallest flower, will give the shelter to the plants, and they carry the shelter to the animals to carry out the pollination. And another example is this is the one example. This is the another examples where the moth and yucca flower will carry out the pollination. Yucca flower will give the shelter as well as the nectar to the flower, to the moth, and moth will lay the eggs inside the flower, where they are. After the laying the eggs, the pollination takes place, and during the seed formation, these laid eggs will be hatched out and the larvae will be come out. So this is about the type of the flowering pollination takes place in this type of the mutually understanding flowers and as well as the animals. But most of the animals will not be carried out the pollination. They get the pollens, they get the nectar from the flower. They are not carried out the pollination. Such type of the animals are called as the pollen or nectar robbers. Okay, so this is about the complete pollination, the types of pollination, then the types of the pollinating agents, that is abiotic agents, wind as well as the water, that is anemophili and the hydrophili. And special examples we can take in the water pollination, that is in the VALLISNERIA, that is freshwater plant, and as the sea grasses, the marine plants, marine aquatic plants, where we observe the special type of the hydrophili. Then we will discuss the biotic agents. The biotic agents, what are the biotic agents? Special type of animals which is utilized for pollination. They have the different types of pollinators, that is hydrophili, the zoophili, there is a entomophili, there is a ornithophili, there is a chiropterophili. Like that, there are different types of pollinators. Then we will discuss the features of insect pollinated flowers. So there are 4 features will be observed. Then unusual pollination will be observed. So next class we will discuss the outbreeding devices. Okay.